At my father's funeral, my boyfriend showed up late, his arm wrapped around a woman I'd not invited. She wore a striking red dress and held her slightly rounded belly as if it were a trophy. Her expression was smug, openly provocative. "I'm carrying your father's child," she announced. "He left a will. You've been disinherited." Disinherited? Great. That meant I wouldn't have to deal with the mountain of debt he left behind. The very next second, my boyfriend, Nicholas, pulled out 2 red booklets and handed them to me. I looked down at the marriage certificate. The name printed on it was Rachel. I'd heard of her. My father's mistress. "Don't blame me for being ruthless," Nicholas said coolly. "All I've ever wanted was the Johnson Group." That much I already knew. I'd just been too busy with work recently to get around to breaking up with him. "She's pregnant with a boy," he added. "Your father said the company would go to the child in her belly." What a proud cuckold. Nicholas was practically beaming with pride. I gave Rachel Cano a once-over, fair-skinned, delicate, with that innocent aura that men fall for far too easily. Well, she might just be a goldmine. After all, my father left behind a load of debt. If I had to pay it off myself, I'd be working from the Warring States period till the present day. But with their help? Maybe just from the Republic era. Rachel seemed to misinterpret my look. She pulled out the will and handed it to the lawyer, claiming it was left by my father. According to it, the company would go to her, and I would get the villa and some cash. My eyes widened in disbelief. I double-checked with the lawyer. "Yes, Miss Johnson," he confirmed. "The will is legally valid. From now on, the Johnson Group will have no further ties to you. What you inherit is limited to 2 suburban villas and 20 million in cash." The old man really did love me. Even in his grave, he was still paving the road ahead. So that's why he had refused to let me mortgage the villas. He must have been trying to leave me something to fall back on. And that 20 million, who knows how he scraped that together? The thought overwhelmed me, and I covered my mouth as tears welled up. Nicholas and Rachel, however, mistook my tears for despair. They smiled even more smugly, as if they'd won. I decided to be kind and offer a helpful reminder. "Nicholas, does my father have any other mistresses or illegitimate kids? You'd better find them fast. I don't think you two can handle all that debt alone. After all, more people means more hands on deck." According to the schedule, the banks and creditors would be knocking within the month. Rachel clearly misunderstood again. She gave a cold snort. "That's none of your concern. As of today, the Johnson Group belongs to the Cano family." "Cano? That's perfect. As long as it's not Johnson, I couldn't care less what surname it carries." I resisted the urge to bow to them in gratitude. Taking the money, I booked a ticket and left Jiangqing that very night. Every second I lingered felt like a betrayal to my father. But just as I finished packing my bags and opened the door to leave, Rachel was already there, with bodyguards. I froze. Did they find out? Trying to stay calm, I put on a cold face and asked, "What do you want?" "Relax," Rachel said, pulling a contract from her bag. "I inherited your father's shares, but I remember you held 20% in the company too." I nearly burst out laughing. That 20%? I had transferred it to Nicholas ages ago, right after I found out he was sleeping with a sugar mama. Nicholas actually married Rachel without telling her? That thought made me look at her with a hint of pity. "For the sake of the child in your belly, my little brother, I suppose, here's a friendly tip: shareholder transfer records are public." Rachel's smile froze. She quickly pulled out her phone and started tapping furiously. I had no interest in watching the show any longer. I picked up my suitcase and turned to leave. But her bodyguards surrounded me, snatched my luggage and phone, and shoved me into a car. Seriously? Who still plays gangster in this day and age? I was still struggling to come up with a countermeasure when Rachel climbed in with a stormy face. Clearly, she'd found the records. "Kidnapping is illegal," I blurted. "Tisk, shut her up," Rachel told the bodyguards. One of them hesitated, his voice trembling. "Ma'am, that'll cost extra." Rachel's face darkened even more. Then, after a long breath, she explained, "Eric Vollmer, he owns 5% of Johnson Group. He insists on seeing you. Otherwise, he won't sign the papers." TCH. So she knew I was planning to find Eric and ask him to transfer the shares. Well then, not only did she save me the taxi fare, but she also solved my ownership problem. What a saint. Before long, the car pulled into Eric's research institute. Eric had once been a poor student my father sponsored. He was 2 years younger than me, but I'd watched him skip grades all the way from 2 years behind to graduating 2 years ahead, eventually earning dual doctoral degrees. After graduation, he wanted to work for my father to repay his kindness over the years. But my father refused. He believed a regular job would waste Eric's talent, so he supported him wholeheartedly in joining the National Research Institute to serve the country. The 5% stake in Johnson Group was my father's graduation gift to him. Truth be told, my father had once raised him as a future son-in-law. But I was young and rebellious, and fell for Nicholas, who fed me sweet lies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that was that. After I started dating Nicholas, I rarely saw Eric anymore. It felt like he was deliberately avoiding me. Then the company hit trouble, and my father and I were too busy trying to keep things afloat. Our contact became even less frequent. Eric didn't even know about the company's collapse, nor of my father's passing. As we passed layers of security, I finally saw a tall, slender figure working intently among machines. His focused expression hadn't changed at all. Rachel let out an impatient cough. "I brought Sandra. Sign the papers." Eric looked up at last but ignored her completely. He walked straight toward me. I tensed instinctively, my fingers tugging at the hem of my shirt. He frowned. "Where's Nicholas?" Before I could answer, Rachel smiled with deliberate cruelty. "Looking for my husband? Got something to say to him?" She placed a hand on her lower back, tilting forward to emphasize her barely there baby bump, clearly showing off. Eric, sharp as ever, caught on instantly. He removed his glasses, pulled a tissue from a nearby box, and began wiping his spotless lenses with slow, deliberate motions. "Sandra," he said flatly, "you've really grown up. Using your father's money to raise Nicholas and another woman's child?" His tone was calm, too calm. But I knew he was furious. No one understood Eric's emotions better than I did. And I could see it now, the other hand gripping his glasses frame had turned ghostly white. He must have thought I was hopelessly in love with Nicholas, willing to sacrifice everything to nourish that man and even plead on behalf of the woman carrying his child. I didn't speak. I simply nodded, putting on the face of a love-struck fool. "Just give it to her, Eric." Eric's fingers trembled visibly as he pressed down on his glasses, but his movements remained elegant and his voice even. 100 million. Rachel exploded. 100 million? For 5%? I sighed inwardly. Even at its peak, Johnson Group's 5% shares weren't worth that much. Eric was quoting an absurd price just to avoid signing. But I couldn't let that happen. I had to get those shares transferred today. Who knows when I'd find another sucker so perfect. I took a deep breath, preparing to use my last resort. But Rachel suddenly had an idea. A glint flashed in her eyes. "Sandra, get Eric to sign the contract, and I'll let Nicholas spend the night with you." I almost puked on the spot. Just imagining where Nicholas's mouth had been was enough to make my stomach revolt. I forced down the bile and swallowed hard. Rachel was repulsive, but oddly helpful. As ridiculous as her offer was, it did solve a pressing problem. Still, I didn't want to use my trump card. I held my breath, letting my eyes well up until tears shimmered on the edge. "Eric," I whispered, voice trembling, "please, just give it to her. I'm begging you." "You're serious?" His voice shook slightly. I looked up at him, just as a tear slipped down my cheek. Crack. His glasses hit the floor, shattered into pieces. Rachel, ever tactless, quickly scribbled on a piece of paper, 5% of Johnson Group in exchange for one night with Nicholas. She even added a signature, the date, and a thumbprint before handing it to me like it was a love letter. I winced and took the paper with trembling fingers, forcing down my revulsion for the sake of the bigger picture. But in Eric's eyes, the scene looked completely different. He stormed forward, snatched the paper from my hands, and crumpled it into a ball before tossing it in the trash. His voice was thick with pain, or perhaps fury. "Sandra, I'm so disappointed in you. Oh come on, I'm doing this for you." I couldn't explain it all to him. I just hoped he'd spoil me one more time like he used to. But this time, I miscalculated. Eric turned his back, slammed the laboratory door shut, and pressed the security buzzer on the wall. We were escorted out immediately. As we were ushered out of the institute, I thought I heard something shatter behind us. Rachel was fuming. She took off her Valentino heels and kicked the hell out of a Lamborghini worth millions. In my head, I silently tallied the repair cost. 20 grand. 40 grand. 60. TSK. If I remembered correctly, that car had already been collateral for a loan from the Rice family 2 months ago. Their youngest son adored luxury cars and had told my father specifically to keep the original paint job. He'd be back in a month to pick it up. Poor Rachel. I lit a candle for her in my heart. Eventually, she looked worn out and limped over to me with her usual arrogance. "Sandra, don't say I didn't warn you. If that contract isn't signed, I promise, you'll never see Nicholas again." Honestly, I was curious. What made her so certain I was still hopelessly in love with that scumbag? But it worked in my favor, saved me from having to fake a reason. "I don't care how you do it," she growled. "Just get the damn contract signed and bring it to me tomorrow. Or else." I finished her sentence for her. "Or else I'll never see Nicholas again, right?" She froze, clearly thrown off by my interruption. Her aura shrank a size, but she still forced out the rest of her threat. Men, they're all the same. I can tell Eric likes you. Sleep with him, and he'll sign. Her moral compass was so off, it must have been manufactured upside down. First she tried to pimp her husband. Now she was trying to pimp me. In her head, there was no problem that couldn't be solved by one night. I couldn't be bothered to argue. I simply lowered my head and rolled my eyes. Rachel mistook that for agreement. Beaming, she shoved the contract into my hands and flounced off with her little troop of bodyguards. TCH. The audacity, no ride back, just left me stranded in the middle of nowhere. But I didn't need to worry about how I'd get home. What I really needed to worry about was myself. I'd barely unlocked my phone when a shadow fell across the screen. A cool scent of mint wafted past my nose. Eric. Without a word, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his car with alarming force. The air inside froze solid. I struggled to find the right words. I figured I should at least try to fix things. Eric, but before I could say more, his lips crashed onto mine. The soft pressure, the intensifying scent of mint, it engulfed me. Memories of us flickered through my mind like a slideshow. I'll admit, I had once felt something for him. But this was over the line. I pushed at his chest, trying to break free. The more I resisted, the tighter he held me. Until finally, I had enough, I bit him. He flinched in pain and let go. I slapped him, hard. You bastard. He touched the side of his reddened face, then gave a crooked, bitter smile. At the corner of his eyes, tears shimmered. He snatched the contract from my arms and scribbled his signature across it. There. I'll give you what you want, big sister. His voice was soaked in sorrow. I froze. He never called me that. No matter how much I teased, begged, or ordered, he never once said, sister. Eric seemed like he still wanted to say something. He opened his mouth, hesitated for a long moment, then silently pulled out a crumpled sheet of paper from his pocket. It was the one Rachel had written. He'd picked it back up. I unfolded it, stained, water-damaged, and covered in smeared tear marks. My chest tightened. Without hesitation, I tore it to shreds. Damn Nicholas. Damn Rachel. It wasn't enough that they disgusted me, they had to hurt Eric too. Something ignited in me. Nicholas had betrayed me. Rachel had betrayed my father. Together, they'd plotted from the start to seize everything he left behind, fully intending to destroy me in the process. At first, I thought saddling them with his debts was punishment enough. But now, I wasn't so sure. My hands trembled with rage. A pale hand gently touched mine. Eric stood frozen, clearly shocked by my outburst. His eyes were still wet, and his confused little head tilt, mixed with teary innocence, was ridiculously adorable. Sandra, he murmured, still looking slightly wronged. The sadness in the air vanished in an instant. I leaned in close, held up my phone, and cheek to cheek, snapped a selfie with Eric. Then I posted the photo to my Moments feed with the caption, Peaceful Times. Visible to Nicholas only. Right after that, I sent a photo of the signed contract to Rachel. Suddenly, I wasn't in such a hurry to leave anymore. I wanted to sit back and enjoy the show, watch the dogs tear each other apart. Sure enough, the message had barely been sent when Rachel responded instantly. I'm coming now. I replied leisurely, tomorrow at 10. My villa. Nicholas, in a fit of self-importance, messaged me too, Sandra, being with Rachel was all for you. One day you'll understand. Please don't hate me. You've always been the one I truly love. Huh. What a joke. Is that supposed to fool anyone with a functioning brain? Expressionless, I opened our chat and sent him the photo of the signed transfer contract. I know, Nicholas. You've worked so hard, enduring all this pain. This contract, Eric only signed it because Rachel said you asked her to come. Wishing you eternal happiness. And with that, I turned off my phone. Then I turned back to face the little wounded lion behind me. Eric had already caught on to my plan. His face was lit up with a dazzling smile, ears flushed pink, and eyes full of fire. Sandra, you did that on purpose. I nodded, reaching out to ruffle his hair, just like I used to. You're too smart. Makes it hard for your big sister to feel accomplished. It was meant to be a compliment, but Eric frowned slightly. Sandra, I don't want to be your little brother. My heart skipped a beat. Only then did I take a moment to look at him properly. In just a few short years, Eric had matured so much. The boy I once knew had grown into a man, one who could stand beside me as an equal. Seeing the hope in his eyes, I pulled out a thick folder from my bag, along with a single sheet of paper, a death certificate and an insurance policy. I'm sorry, Eric. It's not that I don't see your hope. But the road my father gave his life to pave, I need to finish walking it first. My father had died from a fall at a construction site. I had always believed it was an accident. Until I saw the 20 million listed in his will, and later, while cleaning up his room, I found the insurance policy he had hidden under my pillow. All the exhaustion and grief I had buried for days came crashing down in that moment. I curled up beside the bed and cried until I couldn't breathe. But the man who used to gently stroke my head and whisper comfort was gone, forever. Eric, having finished reading the folder, reached the final document at last. He stared at it for a long time. The sun had already dipped below the horizon by the time he finally spoke, his voice dry and hoarse. Was the funeral held? Yes, I replied softly. Yesterday. Dad left a will. The company goes to Rachel's unborn child. The houses and compensation went to me. A sour ache bloomed in my chest. My vision blurred. I turned my head and saw my reflection in the car window, eyes swollen and streaked with tears. Eric pulled me into his arms. This time, I didn't resist. Sandra, he whispered, I want to see the financial reports. How did the company collapse in just 2 years? He suspected foul play. And he wasn't wrong. On the surface, Johnson Group looked solid, booming even. But underneath, its cash flow had been rotting away for a long time. I'd asked my father once why he didn't just get out. His bloodshot eyes had looked at me with guilt as he answered, Sandra, if we leave now, what happens to the workers? Many of the factory employees were deaf-mute. He was afraid that if he sold the company, they'd lose their livelihoods. At the time, I couldn't understand his sense of responsibility. But now, something in me stirred. I wanted to take over those factories, the ones filled with deaf-mute workers that my father had protected. I did the math. If I sold the villa, I could just barely afford to acquire the plants. I told Eric my idea. He nodded, fully supportive. But when it came to the acquisition funds, he had another suggestion. Nicholas and Rachel stole quite a bit from you and your father over the years, didn't they? Eric drove me back to the villa. The moment my phone turned on, I was bombarded, over 99 unread messages, and more than 40 missed calls. All from Nicholas. Scrolling through, it was a mess of sugary sweet nothings and scathing curses directed at Rachel. What stood out, though, was that he mentioned he was negotiating with the company's retail shareholders. The deals were nearly done. Once Rachel inherited the rest of the estate, he planned to file for divorce. Without a prenuptial agreement, he could walk away with half her assets. And then, he'd become the largest shareholder of Johnson Group. According to him, he was doing all this to win the company back for me. Right. And I'm the tooth fairy. He just wanted Eric's 5%. How on earth did I ever fall for a guy like that? I couldn't wait to see Rachel's face when she read those messages. Tomorrow at 10. My villa. After sending that, Eric and I sat down at my father's old desk and began reviewing the documents for the deaf-mute factories. Early the next morning, Rachel was already pounding on the front door. To someone who didn't know better, it probably sounded like she was trying to break it down. Yawning, I opened the door. You're early. We agreed on 10. It's only 7. Rachel was nearly shaking. Where's the contract? I feigned confusion. You don't know? She narrowed her eyes. Know what? I didn't hold back. Nicholas said he must get that 5% no matter what. I handed her the folder Eric and I had prepared the night before, documents for the most profitable subsidiary under Johnson Group, the new energy company. Here. These are the terms he offered. Rachel looked skeptical, but still flipped through the pages. Eric, just in case, had written the estimated valuation on the final page. Sure enough, when Rachel reached it, her pupils dilated. Her face contorted in disbelief. But then, she laughed. Twice. Low and dark. You're lying, she sneered. Nicholas would never offer something this valuable. Still got some brain cells left, I see. I sighed, playing the impatient card. He'll be here at 10. Just ask him yourself. Why should I wait until 10, she snapped. If the contract's signed, I'll just take it. She glanced at her team of bodyguards, then looked back at me with a mocking smirk. Be my guest. I stepped aside to reveal the dining room, filled with uniformed military personnel, sitting calmly as they ate breakfast. Normally, someone at Eric's level wouldn't have access to guards like these. But after Rachel's little stunt yesterday, he'd called in a favor from the institute. The off-duty security team had agreed to help. Rachel backed down immediately. No more talk of taking anything by force. She forced a plastic smile, lips twitching. And right then, the doorbell rang again. I opened the door, and there was Nicholas, striking a pose with a huge bouquet of roses. Sandra, only the freshest blooms are worthy of the most beautiful woman. The moment he finished his cheesy line, I stepped aside. And revealed Rachel, sitting right there on the living room couch. Their eyes met. I smiled. Turns out, smiles never disappear. They just transfer. Well, what a well-matched couple. Impeccable sense of timing, Eric added smoothly, twisting the knife without even blinking. Rachel didn't know if it was the flowers in Nicholas's hands or the word couple from Eric that set her off, but she suddenly grabbed a teacup and fruit plate and started pummeling Nicholas. When she ran out of things on the table, she turned to the couch cushions and continued. TSK. Her combat skills were lacking, to be honest. I hurried to help by handing her a vase, then a teapot, then a salad bowl. In no time, I'd handed her every pot and pan in the house. I stood in the kitchen, hesitated for only a second, and finally came out holding the full kitchen knife set. Rachel was fully on tilt by then. Whatever I handed her, she threw. Nicholas, in a panic, dropped to his knees and started scrambling away, muttering nonstop, "Careful, Rachel. Watch your belly." I couldn't help but laugh coldly. He didn't care about Rachel's belly, he cared about the massive inheritance inside it. Eventually, Rachel tired herself out and collapsed onto the sofa, panting heavily. Nicholas, battered and bruised, crept over and gently touched her stomach, still managing to throw me a meaningful glance. Ugh. Disgusting. Despite everything, they hadn't forgotten why they were here. After a short break, they went back to the original agenda, begging me for Eric's shares. I sipped my tea, seated on one of the few surviving chairs in the house. The shares belonged to Eric. Why are you asking me? They paused, then turned their eyes toward Eric. Just as they were about to speak, I cut in. Wait a sec. Rachel, let's settle the furniture damages first. Rachel straightened, her arrogance back on full display, completely shedding the fragile act she'd used before. Fine. I'll pay. And here I thought you were supposed to be a rich girl, how petty. Sigh. My dad used to collect all sorts of antiques in his spare time. The real ones had already been sold off to pay debts. The rest? Fakes. And I'd been wondering how to get rid of them. Thank you, Rachel. You really cleared out my inventory. I pulled out a thick stack of receipts from the safe and handed them over. Rachel's smile vanished. These are so expensive. Of course they are. All precious antiques passed down from our ancestors. Once broken, they're gone forever, I said, bending down dramatically to pick up a broken ceramic shard. They've probably appreciated in value over the years too. But since you're carrying my baby brother, I won't charge you for the appreciation. Rachel growled under her breath and threw sharp glares at me. I didn't mind. I enjoyed watching her squirm. Then Nicholas decided to join the argument. Rachel inherited everything except the villas and the 20 million, right? So technically, those antiques belong to her. Why should she pay for breaking her own stuff? Nicholas was clearly the smarter one. He'd figured out I was doing this on purpose and was now helping Rachel push back. But those antiques were purchased with my money. Not part of the inheritance. That shut Nicholas up. Rachel, unwilling to give in, moved as if to tear up the receipts. Eric spoke up just in time. Even without the receipts, it's fine. We can call the police and have experts evaluate the damages. Reimburse based on the current market price. He emphasized current with extra clarity. Rachel was about to explode, but Nicholas held her back. She'll pay, he said. TCH. What a scumbag. Rachel will pay, as if it had nothing to do with him. Being his wife must be the unluckiest thing that ever happened to her. But Miss Johnson, Nicholas turned to me smoothly, you didn't invite us here just to talk about antiques, did you? Why not sit down and discuss the real deal? Before I could say a word, Rachel launched into her own accusations. Nicholas. You wanted to trade an 80 million yuan new energy subsidiary for just 5% of the shares? Are you insane? You idiot. I had it all worked out with her yesterday, and you ruined it. A vein popped on Nicholas's forehead. He clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and softened his tone. Rachel, don't listen to Sandra. She's twisting things. I didn't. I leaned back, watching them squabble with great amusement. Oh? But you messaged me yesterday saying you wanted to trade. Now you're denying it? Men are so fickle. Eric shot me a glare and tugged at the sleeve I was fiddling with, clearly not thrilled with me throwing everyone under the bus. Oops. My bad. Collateral damage. Nicholas turned pale instantly, probably recalling how many valuable things he'd said in those messages. At this point, if he didn't want Rachel to find out, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and go along with it. Thankfully, Rachel wasn't the brightest bulb. She missed all the subtext in our exchange and just focused on yelling. Nicholas lowered his eyes. Rachel, it's all my fault. I was trying to help. I meant well, it was just misused by someone else. I rolled my eyes. Oh? And who might that someone be? You really are king of twisting the narrative. Nicholas ignored my sarcasm and pulled Rachel aside to whisper in her ear. She hesitated, nodding slightly, though her expression was still full of doubt. She clearly trusted Nicholas a bit, but not much. Eventually, Nicholas managed to convince her. Miss Johnson, he began smoothly, keeping those shares won't help you. With the stake Rachel and I already hold, it's only a matter of time before we acquire that 5%. You know what those shares are worth. I don't have to tell you. That new energy subsidiary? Even if I wanted to trade it, Rachel wouldn't allow it. But we've had something, you and I. So Rachel and I talked it over. We're willing to exchange a few suburban factories instead. You told me before, that's where the Johnson Group began. Putting them back in your hands would honor your father's legacy. Nicholas's skill at manipulating people was masterful. All feelings. Zero numbers. My dad left everything to Rachel. What makes you think I care about his legacy? I said coldly. Nicholas was cunning as ever. If I agreed too quickly, he'd get suspicious. And if that happened, those factories wouldn't be so easy to claim. So I played the part of the touched, emotional daughter, and after some back and forth, I agreed, on the surface. Final deal, 3 factories and 20 acres of surrounding land in exchange for Eric's 5%. Nicholas, afraid I'd change my mind, immediately called the lawyer to draft a new contract. The moment the agreement was signed, Rachel couldn't help but sneer. Sandra, you really are a clueless rich girl. Didn't you know? All those factories are staffed entirely by disabled workers, and they're under lifetime contracts with headquarters. Slow production. Full room and board. High insurance costs. You'll be bled dry before you break even. Nicholas clearly hadn't expected Rachel to gloat so openly. He was giving her crazy eyes, practically twitching. I kindly reminded her, Miss Can, I may have signed, but Eric hasn't. Oi. Silence fell like mist over the river Cam. Then Eric smiled, darkly. You know, Rachel, brains are a beautiful thing. Optional, perhaps. But not having one? That's a real shame. And you, Nicholas, how's it feel to be betrayed by your own teammate? Nice, isn't it? I almost burst out laughing. How did I never realize Eric had such a sharp tongue? I was ready to knight him on the spot. His new title? Lord of Clapbacks. Unlike me, who was having the time of my life, Rachel's face was red with rage. Nicholas stood frozen, eyes darting wildly, clearly trying to spin a story fast enough to recover. Poor thing. His mental CPU must be overheating by now. Eric and I weren't even planning to push further. But with the mood already at this point, it felt like a waste not to throw in one final blow. So the deal was amended again. Rachel added a fruit orchard near the factories. And this time, from the moment the new paperwork was signed, she didn't say a single word. Take care now, I chirped. Don't forget to transfer the money for those antiques. Come again soon. Rachel stumbled, tripped over her own feet, and nearly fell face first. Luckily, Nicholas reacted fast, diving forward to cushion her fall. The pained grimace on his face looked so intense, even I winced in sympathy. Still, perfect ending. Trash couple, officially locked together for life. Nicholas and Rachel left, but the lawyer stayed behind. Adam would be assisting me with the next phase of the process. To be honest, my feelings toward Adam were complicated. During my father's life, he had always considered Adam a trusted friend. At the company, Adam received the best treatment and highest trust. My father had even privately invested in a law firm for him, helping him start his own practice, and then outsourced the entire Johnson Group legal department to that firm. That level of trust was rare in a company of Johnson Group's size. Even I had grown up under Adam's watchful eye. I had always seen him as family. But the moment something happened to my dad, Adam immediately aligned himself with Rachel and Nicholas. From a business perspective, I couldn't fault him. But emotionally, I couldn't accept it. Originally, I planned to let it go. Just treat everything as a business transaction. After all, Adam had no legal obligation to warn me. What I hadn't expected was that Adam would choose to speak first. Sandra, he said quietly, there's something about Mr. Johnson I think you deserve to know. Before he passed, Mr. Johnson had me prepare 2 legal documents. One was a prenuptial agreement. The other, a will. The prenup was for Miss Cano. Mr. Johnson was anxious when he came to me. He said Miss Cano was pregnant, but the company was in bad shape. He wanted to give her and the child legitimacy, but he also feared his debts might affect them. So he asked me to draft a prenup that would protect them from future risks. Not long after I finished it, Mr. Johnson returned and told me to void the prenup. Instead, he had me draw up the will you've now seen. He gave very specific instructions, that the will must include a gift clause. The gist of it was, even if Miss Cano's child wasn't biologically part of the Johnson family, the inheritance would still be granted, not as an heir, but as a gift. Mr. Johnson wasn't himself that day. Before leaving, he asked me a lot of questions about accidental death insurance. He claimed it was just because he was getting older, wanted to make sure you were protected. I tried to talk him out of it. I spent the entire afternoon trying to change his mind. Adam's voice cracked, and his head lowered further with every word. A tear dropped soundlessly onto the carpet. If I had just thought a little harder, said something more, told you earlier, maybe Mr. Johnson wouldn't have died. He gave me everything. Treated me with more kindness than I deserved. He asked me not to tell you anything, but I can't sit by while Rachel and Nicholas treat you like this. That gift clause? I believe it was because Mr. Johnson suspected the child wasn't even his. I'm certain Rachel had something to do with his state of mind that day. I sat frozen, stunned. I remembered once, my dad had joked about getting remarried and asked what I thought. I'd brushed him off. He'd even brought Rachel to dinner with us before. I'd always assumed she was just a fling. I never thought he had taken her seriously. But considering Nicholas married Rachel right after my father's death, it was obvious now, they had been in it together from the start. I couldn't sit still anymore. I quickly thanked Adam and left for the company. Johnson Group was no longer Johnson Group. The new logo read, Kano Group. In just one day, even the receptionists and security had been replaced. Everything screamed one thing: my father's death might not have been an accident at all. I stormed into the executive office. Rachel was lounging in my father's chair, painting her nails. Nicholas was calmly steeping tea, using the exact tea set I had once painstakingly picked out for my father. The moment Rachel saw me, she moved to call security. Nicholas stopped her. Let her sit. I pulled out the chair, sat down, and asked, how did my father really die? Nicholas, unfazed, slid a freshly brewed cup of tea toward me. Haven't you already guessed? It was an accident. I lifted the cup, and flung the scalding tea in his face. You're full of shit. Nicholas calmly dabbed at his face with a napkin. Sandra. Still that same fiery temper. I endured years by your side, humiliated and invisible. Did you ever once really see me? If you really want to know, I'll tell you. You already know about Rachel's prenup, right? But what you don't know is the prenup your father tried to make me sign. He wanted me to marry into your family with no dowry, serve the Johnsons like a slave, and have all future children carry the Johnson surname. In his eyes, I was just a reproductive tool. I refused to sign. So he forced me to break up with you. Tell me, Sandra. Didn't your father deserve to die? His mock pitiful expression made me nauseous. Did you ever love me? I asked coldly. Nicholas said nothing. You chased me from the beginning because I was the sole heir. And now you dare claim my father insulted you? You make me sick. I grabbed my bag and turned to leave. Rachel finally spoke. Your father's death really was an accident. Nicholas, you can tell her now. To my shock, Nicholas obeyed her. Your family's arrogance is hereditary. When your dad forced me to leave you, I reached out to Rachel. Asked her to get close to him. Did he really think, at his age, a young woman would pursue him out of genuine affection? He was pathetic. After Rachel got pregnant, the old fool handed her a prenup, just like the one he gave me. That night, Rachel called me. We decided to have her marry him first. Then we'd stage a tragic accident for both you and your dad. Once the two of you were gone, everything would belong to us. But your father overheard that phone call. I was nervous for days, thinking he'd retaliate. But instead, he left a will. Turns out, your father loved you more purely than you'll ever understand. My nails dug deep into my palms. Blood trickled down my fingers. My vision darkened with rage. A wave of dizziness crashed over me. Nicholas. Rachel. You will pay for this. They laughed. I could barely stand. But I forced myself to turn, to walk out of the office that had once belonged to my father. And there, leaning against the hallway wall, was Eric, quietly waiting for me. He took me home. The moment I got home, I took out the contact list of my father's creditors. I called them one by one, informing them of his passing and the updated status of the debts, and very considerately gave them Rachel and Nicholas's contact information. I couldn't wait. Not even a second longer. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I dialed. It wasn't that I was afraid of the massive debt. I just wanted my dad back. But life doesn't deal in what-ifs. After finishing all the calls, I packed my bags overnight and headed to the few factories where my father had started his business. Eric wanted to quit his job and go with me. I turned him down. He had his own world to conquer. I didn't want him to give anything up for me. I'm not some helpless girl waiting for a man to take care of me. I could build my future with my own hands. I wanted to run my father's factories well. The following days were intensely busy. Not only did I have to manage every big and small issue at the factories, but I also had to deal with the constant harassing phone calls from Nicholas and Rachel. The creditors did not disappoint. Just one day after my calls, they each showed up with legal teams and picked the Kano group apart. Whatever was left, naturally, fell on Rachel and Nicholas. At first, they still had the energy to come find me and hurl insults. But later, they were blacklisted for dishonesty and spent their days hiding in the shadows, dodging debts. Naturally, they no longer had the time to come after me. I, too, became immersed in my new life and didn't pay attention to their updates anymore. I had to live the life my father traded with his own for me. The last I heard of them came from Eric. Rachel and Nicholas were sentenced to life in prison for the trafficking of women and children. All their assets were confiscated. The news report said that at first, they had sold their own child. Later, realizing how quick the money came, Rachel began luring women and children off the streets. With her delicate features and pitiful demeanor, she was deceptively convincing. The kidnapped children were then transported to rural areas by Nicholas. In just a few months, they committed dozens of crimes, each more appalling than the last. They will spend the rest of their lives behind bars. Thankfully, the authorities intervened in time, and all the abducted women and children were rescued. I clutched my phone, sobbing uncontrollably. I sent Eric a single message: "Karma never misses." Epilogue. After I took over the factories, I discovered that the employees were far more motivated than Rachel had described. They weren't slow or untrainable at all. Once they learned who I was, they treated me like their own family. In them, I found something I didn't expect: a second home. Together with the workers, we doubled the factory's profits. Over time, I finally had enough capital to invest in other industries. Turns out, I really did inherit my father's business acumen. By sheer luck and persistence, I began to see some real success. 5 years later, I finally bought back the Johnson Group building. It wasn't as grand as it once had been, but I was content. Now, I understand what my father meant: a business should always put people first. And I believe, under my care, the Johnson Group will thrive again. Eric and I got married. We had 2 children. He still works at the Research Institute. He's tried to resign countless times to join my company, but I refused every time. I always remembered what my dad once said: geniuses are born to serve their country. I once visited Rachel and Nicholas in prison. Rachel begged me to adopt her child. She swore the child was truly my father's. I wasn't sure if I believed her. But still, I went to the orphanage and brought the child home. I never did a DNA test. After all, the child was innocent. The grudges of the last generation were better left to the wind. The road ahead was his to walk. Adam truly saw me as his daughter. He continued providing free legal counsel to my company. On my wedding day, I caught him secretly wiping away tears. That night, he went to visit my father's grave. Don't ask how I knew. Eric and I went, too. When we saw Adam there, we quietly turned and left. Turns out, Adam's bond with my father ran deeper than I ever imagined. I've been living a good life. A loving husband, a happy family, a thriving business, children by my side. But on quiet nights, I still miss my father, the man who had always, unconditionally, adored me. And in those moments, I walk alone to the balcony, look up at the stars, and make a wish to the sky: "Dad, if there's a next life, let me be the one to protect you."